Hey there, and welcome to That News You Care About, a weekly video game news show from the folks over at That Nerdy Site. Today is Tuesday, October 13th, 2020, and I'm one of your hosts, Logan Wilkinson. Joining me this week is my Phoenix son, Trevor Starkey.
Hello.
Hi, how you doing there, Trev? On a nice little Tuesday recording of the show.
I'm hanging in there. Yeah, Tuesday. It's already been a week, so I'm ready for this week to be done already. I in honor of kind of the main topic of the show that we're going to be tackling, I did put in a request for time off from work for like 4 days around the launch of the next systems, so I can just kind of like
that's smart. I should
not
do something like
worry
that
about work at all and just like enjoy my video games next month. So
that is a good idea. I might do the same thing whenever this podcast ends, because like Trevor just said, our topic this week is the next generation of video game consoles, in particular the PS5, and its coming launch, I think almost exactly a month. I think a month was yesterday.
Yep.
So we are talking, and we're going to go through the list of announced games for the launch of PlayStation 5. This list is compiled by pushsquare.com. So shout out to Sammy Barker over there who put it together. We were looking at that list and going game by game there in alphabetical order. So shout out to that. And I think we just jump right into one of the biggest games right out of the gate, Trev, with Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Mm-hmm.
What are your kind of thoughts, hopes, expectations, anything about that game and its launch?
So Assassin's Creed Valhalla technically launches a couple days earlier because it's launching alongside the Xbox on November 10th. This is one I'm probably not going to dive into at launch, just because I have to really be in the mood for an Assassin's Creed game. I notoriously am not a huge fan of Assassin's Creed, specifically because I don't enjoy how the game plays and feels. Yet, despite that, I did get the platinum in Odyssey as the last one out. Yeah, it was like I kept kind of playing through it and hate playing through it. At the time, that's kind of how I was describing it. I was like, I'm hating this game, but it still beats, doing whatever else I could be doing at this time. So I kind of just kept pushing through it, and then I got to the point where I was like, all right, well, at this point, I just need to kind of finish opening up the map and then go and get like all of the sunken treasures, and I'll basically have the platinum in that one. So I want to say like 60 or 80 hours, whatever I put into that one. I got the platinum, and then I was like, okay, I'm done with this. I have occasionally been tempted to maybe try and go back and like visit the expansions or the DLC or whatever, but I never did. So Valhalla is one that I'm not overly like eager to pick it up. I think I have it ordered just to have it, but it's probably something that I'll hop into, December for like a game of the year conversation kind of stuff. It's not one of the like top tier I need to play this as like one of my first PlayStation 5 experiences. Oh, it kind of on that, like the reason we kind of landed on this topic is we're both planning on getting the PlayStation 5 at launch, and so it was like, hey, let's talk about how excited we are about each of the games in the launch lineup. Since that's what we'll have to jump into a month from now. So yeah, Valhalla is, I expect it to pretty much be typical Assassin's Creed. I'm not expecting them to deviate from the formula or anything like that. So it's just one of those. I'm like, yeah, I'll get around to it when I get around to it, I guess. How about you?
So I, for years, echoed your Assassin's Creed thoughts. I've talked before about how Assassin's Creed is like one of the biggest series that I feel like I should really, really love, but I just consistently never have. That series is made for someone like me with my kind of historical interests and passions and just like this sprawling narrative and going deep into these kind of like ancient cities. And I love all of that side of things. It was always, I never liked the anime stuff, and the games just didn't play well. Certainly they didn't play like I wanted them to play, to your point. I think the kind of, not reboot, but kind of taking that break for those years and then come back with like Origins and then Odyssey helped the series tremendously. Um, I love Assassin's Creed Odyssey. If I'd played the game the year it came out, it would have been my game of the year. Almost certainly. I really fell in love with Assassin's Creed Odyssey in a way I didn't expect. Um, and even playing through like maybe a third of Origins before kind of getting pulled away by newer things, I enjoyed my time with Origins, if not quite as much. So I'm excited, right? Like, I want Assassin's Creed to go in that direction. Like, I like how Odyssey in particular played. I really enjoy that. I like how it kind of refined the map mechanics and the systems in that game and the kind of the upgrading skills. And then I think they really refined more of the story and narrative to tailor it more to kind of the things I enjoy and I like. And the setting of Valhalla is so cool, right? Like this kind of Alfred the Great-esque period in England. I like the idea of like potentially building up my own community and what that looks like. I think the characters look super cool. And so I'm actually really excited for Valhalla. Looking at the list now, like it may be the game I'm actually most excited for the launch of the PS5. It's certainly right in like the top 5, top 3, if it's not the most anticipated one for me. Because I'm hopeful it'll be what I wanted from Odyssey, and then build off that and expand that world, expand those gameplay systems. So I'm actually really excited for it. I think it could be my favorite game right out of the gate, and a potential game of the year contender for me. Would it be my game of the year? I don't know. I really love Ghost a lot, and obviously The Last of Us Part 2 is still hanging over my head to play in probably December, but I think it's definitely a contender for that if it really clicks for me like Odyssey did.
Cool.
Next up, we have this one I feel like is going to be much quicker, so sorry all of the Playroom fans out there, is Astro's Playroom. Trevor, if you have any thoughts, you can feel free to share them right now.
Yeah, I mean, so I am a huge fan of Astrobot Rescue Mission. I think it is one of the best PlayStation VR experiences I've played. And in our recent rundown of all the PS4 titles that we did the kind of the bracket for, that's the right now it's our Patreon exclusive episode or early access episode. It'll go live to everybody end of October. I was a huge champion for Rescue Mission, and so I'm actually very excited for Astro's Playroom as like the built-in pack-in game. It's going to be a 4 to 5 hour platforming experience with some collectibles and stuff like that. If they capture the same kind of like just joy and fun of Rescue Mission, I'm gonna be all for this. This is probably gonna be, one of those first experiences I really hop into. I remember hearing somebody kind of joke, might have been our friends over at the trophy room, talking about the idea that like, hey, this could be the game we hop into while we're waiting for whatever other game installs and downloads and whatnot onto the system. So you hop into this, you play through this. It's designed to kind of introduce everybody to like the features of the of like the DualSense and then also just kind of the PS5 itself. So I think it's a good throwback to kind of the pack-in titles that we used to get with kind of these games, and I expect it to just be a fun 3D platformer for a few hours of good time with a cute, charming story / main protagonist character there in the little robot dude.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely excited. I haven't never played Rescue Mission, to find the kind of, because you do rave about that game.
I'll say it was my, because I think that came out in 2018, right? I think it was my second, like, it was my number 2 game of the year it came out.
Sounds right.
And I'm pretty sure it was 2018 because I'm pretty sure it was just behind God of War, basically.
That sounds right.
And I would, like, we talked about this a little bit on the bracket show, but basically it was like we got down to kind of the 4 final games that I won't dive into and to give away spoilers, but it was one of them. It survived its bracket to the final 4, and I was kind of looking at those 4 games. I was like, I would give at least 3 of these 4 games a 10 out of 10, and Astrobot was one of those. I would give Astrobot 10 out of 10 in terms of like it is a masterpiece of what it's trying to do. It very much Rescue Mission kind of was very frequently lauded as like doing for VR what Mario 64 did for like 3D platforming. In terms of just like the approach it was taking to that kind of game, and it very much felt like a evolution of Super Mario 64. And having recently hopped back into Super Mario 64 for in the 3D All Stars collection, that still resonates, and I think Astrobot Rescue Mission in particular, and I imagine this will have a lot of the same kind of sensibility, is just a phenomenal kind of like approach to fun platforming, collectible idea, innovative kind of like quote power-ups, I guess, and abilities that you can use that really serve as like a showcase for kind of the functionality. Like Rescue Mission really plays with like the touchpad and VR itself, in terms of how it does kind of the same stuff that like Tearaway did for the Vita, where it's like, this is the game that was designed for this thing. Astro's Playroom strikes me as this is the game that's designed right out the gate for the DualSense 5 to kind of show the functionality inherent in that new controller. So, and it's just wrapped up in a fun platformer.
Yeah, I mean, as is the case many times, you've talked me more into this game. So it might be one of those like first weekend games I play in between sessions of getting, I don't know, murdered in Valhalla or Call of Duty or something, popping over for a few hours of pleasant Astro's Playroom time.
Yeah.
It's also, this might actually be true. It will also probably be the first next-gen review that might hit that nerdy site as well, considering its brevity and also your passion for it.
Yeah.
So that is also possible, if not probable. After that, we've got Borderlands 3, which was, again, I still find myself laughing every time I say it, that nerdy site's game of the year last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's now coming to the PlayStation 5. Trev, you plan on going back yet again to Pandora?
It's not like in the plans. I never went back to like the last couple DLC packs that came out to kind of play through those missions. And I want to do that at some point. So, maybe waiting and doing that again sometime in like December with the PS5 might make sense. But yeah, this is one I'm just like, I played that game. I platinumed it. I haven't really had the urge to hop back into that game anytime recently. So we'll see if the like, especially because the things that the PS5 is adding are really only great for like local co-op kind of play. So I'm like, I'm not going to be playing with like 4 players on a couch to get 4-player split screen or whatever is on there. So it's like that none of that matters to me. So, yeah, there's one of those like, oh, loading times being faster will be nice, but other than that, I'm like, I don't really need to hop back into Borderlands 3. I kind of enjoyed what I wanted to enjoy out of most of that game, but maybe I'll feel the urge to go through and do a shooter and say, hey, yeah, let me go ahead and get the trophies on that game back up to 100% and finish out the DLC.
I think for me, it's one of, obviously we played Borderlands 3 together last year and beat the game. I would, my thoughts echo yours. I would rather, I feel like at this point, if I was to, because I didn't platinum it, but I got probably like 40% of the trophies or whatever. I would sooner go back and just play the PS4 version and platinum it via that route than do it kind of all again on the PS5.
It is an upgradable thing, and I believe they've said that like your saves and stuff will transfer over.
Sure. So. I just feel like that's one of the things, like if there's any chance that I play that, and I think the chance is small, it would be in that December kind of Christmas break, New Year time span, or maybe into January when there's kind of like a bit of a lull. But I just think, as I kind of look at this list of 20 games, that it's hard to find a time where I maybe will go to that. But who knows? Borderlands 3 is a great game, though. Again, game of the year. After that, we've got Bugsnax. And I'm actually really curious about this because I don't actually know what your thoughts on the game as a whole are, really.
Mm-hmm. So this is one, just as an outside of even kind of the impressions, I feel like this of the games on this list has the most potential to be the PS5's Resogun, in that I would not be at all surprised if PlayStation is working to make this like the PlayStation Plus launch game for the PS5, because that's, I mean, like theoretically there's going to be one or two games that, apart from the PlayStation Plus collection that you're going to get all those PS4 games on, theoretically there's going to be one or two like pack in PlayStation Plus titles, and Bugsnax seems, based on just kind of the fervor people have for it, like an optimal choice for that, in the same way that Resogun was. For me, like, Bugsnax looks like it's going to be a fun, weird game. I'm eager to hop into it. I don't know if it'll be, one of the first things I really hop into, but it's definitely one I'm like, when Kind of Funny recently did a they talked about their first 90 minutes with the game. They Greg and Blessing sat down with it and did a first impressions, and some of the games that were thrown around that like are inspirations for Bugsnax being Pokemon Snap and being Dark Cloud. Those are a couple of like my favorite games from like bygone eras. So like it sounds like it could scratch a whole bunch of itches for me. It's just a matter of like when I'll actually squeeze it in compared to some of the other things. Like, it sounds like for me it might be the same kind of thing like Astro's Playroom is for you. Like, it'll be a fun palate cleanser in between other games or other experiences or something like that.
It's a weird game in the sense that, and I think it's true for you too, where if it wasn't, I think partially the Pop Agenda association and then Greg kind of amplifying it as well, I don't know if I would have almost any interest in the game, really. But the fact that, like, Jen and George and Nick and MC and then obviously Greg, and like the fact they're all kind of champion, it's always in the timeline, they're always doing stuff with it, A, has, like, put it very visibly on my radar, and B, has me kind of morbidly curious is like the wrong word, but that kind of thing of just like, I would have just been like, this looks like a fine game, and then now I'm like, what is going on with this? Like, what is the full extent of this game? I'll definitely play a little bit of it just to help support Pop Agenda and the people over there, because I obviously love all of them, but I'm definitely curious about it. Like, I would love for it to be that Resogun, and like be really like a low-key, like, great game, like the sleeper hit kind of the launch window. I don't know if it will be that. I think there are a few games that kind of could take that. But I'm definitely curious about what it is almost, and like what really that game is going to kind of entail when you start playing it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, even outside of, our friends at Pop Agenda kind of being the ones doing a lot of the marketing and promotion for it, I like, even taking that aside, like I said, the game seems to be inspired by games that I really enjoy and connect to. So I think it would have been a Trevor jam more so than a Logan jam. So yeah, I even if it wasn't like Jen and George kind of like, rallying behind it, I probably would have been interested in picking this one up, especially because it's also, this strikes me as one of those games that is like PS3 era, like weird PlayStation. And obviously it's not PlayStation exclusive or anything like that. It is going to be on the Epic Game Store and all that, but like it just has that weird vibe to it. That's like, I'm interested in the quirkiness of it, and it might be something I hop into and I'm like, maybe this isn't for me after all. But yeah, it's certainly something that would have caught my attention either way, especially it it being able to hit that like launch time frame where there is kind of that drought of games to play. Usually, like we're hitting a launch and we're talking about 20 games here basically, and a lot of them are up-reses or ports or whatever to the new console. So the fact that this is one of the handful of new things to play that you could also play on PS4 if you wanted, it still has me like that's something I'll hop into in the same way that like I remember hopping into when the PS4 launched. I hopped into like Lego Marvel's Avengers or something like that. Like I think maybe it was Lego Marvel Superheroes. Yeah, that's the one it was. And it was just like, that's a fun, family-friendly kind of game to play that I don't know if I would have put time into it had I not been like really looking for other things to play. But yeah, it's still, it'll scratch that, itch as well. And I just have to hope that I don't get that song stuck in my head just for weeks on end after basically from November 12th through the end of the year.
Again, I'm definitely curious of kind of what the game is going to be. I would love nothing to make me happy than for this game to kind of be that sleeper hit. Like I think Astro's Playroom 2 can be like another one. It's going to be like, I don't know how many people played Rescue Mission, so I think this could be one that like has a potentially bigger like pool of people playing it and kind of noticing it. I'm definitely excited. Shifting gears pretty hard. We then transition to Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. Bad name, maybe fun game. Who knows? I'm excited for it. As the resident Call of Duty boy at That Nerdy, I'm sure I will have thoughts and impressions of this game pretty quickly out of the gate. Especially as someone who is a big fan of the Black Ops series, kind of within a series in Call of Duty. Super excited. I want it to be weird, is what I've kept going back to again and again, because that first Black Ops is such a weird game. Like, I've talked about it before on a few different pods, but like, I almost can't believe they got away with how weird it is. Like, having played it again last year for a series, like, it's just a bonkers video game. And so like I want it to be super bonkers and super weird and lean into it and get trippy. I don't know if I think they will. I don't know if I think Call of Duty or Black Ops and like Treyarch are that kind of studio and that kind of series anymore. But either way, I'm very excited. Either way, it looks fun and over the top and ridiculous, and like it'll be a blast of a like 8 to 9 hour campaign. Don't know how much of the multiplayer I'll play, but I'm also I think this game is going to come out at a good time where like I'm really kind of getting into Warzone again, after like getting into it a little bit over the summer. So I'm kind of getting into that Call of Duty fix where like I kind of want an actual like campaign now to play through. So I'm excited. I'm ready. I imagine me and like my Missouri kind of crew will all hop into it together over one weekend and just kind of plow through the multiplayer and then plow through like the campaign. So I'm excited. I think it'll be possibly, again, if it's not Astro's Playroom, this might be the first video game I actually beat next gen, because obviously Assassin's Creed is going to be significantly longer. So I'm very excited. I know that you don't really have that much of an interest, but I am kind of curious what, if any, thoughts you might have for Black Ops Cold War. God, the name is so bad.
Yeah. The only Call of Duties I've ever sat down with were a few years back when they did the Infinite Warfare packed in with Modern Warfare Remastered.
Yeah.
I played both of those, and it was like it was fine. I did specifically like with Trevor Trove at the time. I did basically a week of first-person shooter or a week of shooter
that
reviews.
Actually. Yeah.
That included those two games. It included Gears 5, and that's why I had to catch myself and say it wasn't
Titanfall
specifically
2, I think.
Or Gears 4, I guess it was. Yeah, Titanfall 2 and what was the other one? Battlefield 1. So it's like those five games kind of all hitting around that same time basically. And of them, like the Call of Duty ones were like middle of the pack for me. I enjoyed them probably more than Gears, just because Gears always feels so heavy. But like of those, Titanfall was the clear standout for me. Titanfall 2, both in gameplay and in its story and the different kind of approaches they brought into each of the different levels. And then I really preferred the bite-sized stories of Battlefield 1 compared to the Call of Duty stories. So yeah, it was interesting, and admittedly, like, the Infinite Warfare was certainly kind of the new one, and then Modern Warfare Remastered, like, enough of the big moments of Modern Warfare had already been, like, I already knew about them because the game was 10 years old or whatever at that point. And I've existed in the gaming space, so I knew a lot of those, big things, like like you get nuked kind of thing being like the big one that I remembered hearing. So yeah, like those moments didn't have probably the impact that they might have had. Infinite Warfare was interesting, at least in terms of, like, I was like, oh, it feels like I'm playing, Battlestar Galactica, basically. But yeah, for this one, I nothing has really compelled me to come back to Call of Duty since then, and Cold War is certainly not like doing that either. The trailer they showed at the last PlayStation showcase, I think we talked about how super fast and furious it felt, and I'm like, that doesn't seem like Cold War and what I think of in terms of Cold War, but whatever. It certainly feels like what I think of in terms of Call of Duty. So, yeah, it's one of those. I'm just like, this isn't really up my alley. It might be the kind of thing that somewhere down the line I'll we'll do some kind of show of like, hey, let's talk about the different Call of Duty games or something, and I'll hop into this game down the line as a result of that. But yeah, just never has really been my super my jam. So yeah, not really on my radar to pick up kind of in the immediate aftermath of the launch.
Sure, it looks fun. I'm excited. I also am excited to do a lot of reading. Like, I assume there are going to be some shoutouts Call of Duty related probably when it comes out, in terms of just like critical kind of analysis and thoughts and opinions on the game and its story and its setting. Yusuf Cole had one that came out today, or at least I saw it today, already on the game. That's very good. So I'm also excited for, kind of from a writer's perspective, some of the kind of thoughts and reviews you might see coming out of a discussion of a Black Ops Cold War set game. But either way, we go on to Demon Souls. I don't know how much either one of us will necessarily say to this. I will not be playing Demon Souls, I can't imagine, at the launch window. Trevor, what, are you going to be playing Demon Souls?
So I do have it ordered because...
Do you really?
I do. I have it ordered. I doubt this is going to be the case. But like, there's a part of me that is holding out hope that because it's Bluepoint doing like a remaster of this game, that they will include a difficulty mode, like that.
There's no way. There's no way.
Be
surely
an option in there for difficulty settings. I'm not expecting it, but it would be really nice. But even that aside, I'm picking it up because it's, we're coming up. It's going to be launching in November here, and one of my most popular things I've ever done was when I streamed and did a 24-hour Bloodborne stream for Extra Life. So I'm contemplating doing a Demon Souls Extra Life stream this year. It wouldn't be kind of in that launch window. I'd probably wait and do it like Thanksgiving weekend or something like that. But so yeah, that's kind of in the potential content ideas right now is let's go see what Demon Souls feels like. And the game looks really beautiful. And yeah, I'm very hopeful that there's some kind of difficulty mode setting out there, since it's not directly being done by FromSoft. But I'm not holding out hope for it, and not even like anticipating it, but it would be like, that would be one way of for sure getting me to hop in and check out that game, is if it had more like the Jedi Fallen Order kind of vibe to it, where it's like, yeah, you can set it, you can drop it down to easy. It's still going to be a challenge for you, but like it'll be doable. I think that would be a great way to get a lot of people into that game that otherwise wouldn't check it out. But even if it's not there, I'm at least giving myself the opening to hop into that game. Again, it's not going to be one of the first ones I hop into, and
Sure.
and given how Bloodborne for 24 hours nearly broke me, I don't think I'll do 24 hours of Demon Souls, but I might do like a couple 8-hour streams of Demon Souls,
Yeah.
Thanksgiving weekend or something like that, to kind of capture some of that like rage and terror of of playing a Soulsborne game again.
Yeah, it's one for me. Again, I think we're all in the same. Like, we would each like to like From Software games. They're just not fun.
Yeah.
And I think it's just kind of that simple. Like, Bloodborne in particular, like, again, as someone who's, like, a huge fan of, like, the Prepare to Try, now RKG guys, like, massive fan of them, love what they do. I've seen all these games very in-depth, and, like, their Bloodborne series in particular is, like, my favorite one of the From Software games they did. And, like, Bloodborne in general seems like it's super cool. I've written about it before for my own limited time playing it. It's just, the world is cool. I think the idea is cool. It's just not fun to play. And not only is it not fun to play, but it's like really punishing to play. Like it shouldn't be this unrewarding to play a video game. Certainly early on, when you're still just figuring everything out. And again, if they had a difficulty section in these games, like I would give them a chance. And maybe if Demon Souls does have one, I would consider it. Right, like it would be kind of cool to see like the genesis of it all, but without knowing one or the other, I would say it's unlikely I will. But who knows? Maybe we'll be blessed by Shuhei Yoshida himself, and there will be a difficulty set in Demon Souls.
Yeah, one of the last things I want to say on that is playing Bloodborne a few years ago really, I think, surprised me in how much it made me better at more and more games that have come out since, because obviously the Soulsborne genre has kind of taken gaming by storm, and action combat games have really started leaning more into the dodge and parry mechanics that are really kind of at the crux of the Soulsborne games. So like, even I remember at the time, I was even better at Final Fantasy 15 because I had played Bloodborne. Most recently, I was much better at Ghost of Tsushima than I probably would have been, because Bloodborne at least gave me like the patience to explore the parry and dodge mechanics, whereas like 2016 Trevor or whatever it was would have just gone like headlong into every combat encounter in something like Ghost. But really, like, when you do take the time to kind of figure out what those patterns are and how best to, like, is this a move I need to dodge away from, or is this a move I need to parry away from, I think really, like, just getting that in my gaming vocabulary more so really has ended up making a lot more of the games that I do enjoy, made them better. And God of War is probably the best example of that, because there's a ton of that. Like, Bloodborne and like the Souls games were absolutely inspirations for God of War's combat, and they rightly did not lean into the difficulty and the brutality of the Soulsborne games, but yeah, I think that's like, when I look back, and again, this is something we talked about on the bracket episode of That Nerdy Site show, but the respect I have for Soulsborns after playing Bloodborne is certainly up there. But yeah, it's just not my cup of tea to get beaten down and beaten down and beaten down, even by like the simplest of fights. A skeleton being able to one hit kill me or something like that isn't my definition of a good time. So again, like, I hope they go the route with something like Jedi Fallen Order, and make it more accessible to the broader swath of gamers, because I just don't. There, you will never be able to convince me that the difficulty of those games is what makes them good games.
Yes, 100% agreed. And more than that, not to get too far down this rabbit hole, but like, it also just makes them inherently inaccessible video games too, to just a broad swath of gamers as well. Again, we don't need to necessarily get too deep down that rabbit hole, but that's also something that's always kind of frustrated me, is seeing whether it's able gamers or other kind of avenues and organizations that kind of support a broader access to people being able to play video games. FromSoft is kind of one that they target a lot for its just utter inaccessibility. That's unnecessary. But again, we'll kind of veer away from that. Next on the list is Destruction All-Stars. What do you got to say about this, Trev?
This is one, like, I've gone out of my way to try and, like, look up stuff on Destruction All-Stars and like, read up on the game and see what the game's going to be. And I just, like, none of it appeals to me. None of it really, like, calls out to me and interests me. It feels like the PS5 version of what Riggs was for PSVR.
I think it's great, yeah.
It's going for that, multiplayer that's not a shooter kind of feel to it. But I just don't. Nothing of it, like, speaks to me. I don't know if it's going to find an audience at launch, especially with some of the other big, blockbuster things that are hitting at launch. Like, this would be the kind of thing that would probably do fine if the system wasn't launching with a Spider-Man game, or some of the other ones we've already kind of touched on. If this was, just like, it is launching in the best possible window for it to find an audience, because there will be, a hungry audience of people there looking for anything to play. So something like this would just go out and die 2 years from now on a PlayStation 5. But I still don't see it, doing too much to move the needle for me.
Yeah, this is kind of kicks off a stretch of, like, the games I'm least interested in out of the 20. This kind of is the first one that kind of carries over for, like, a run of the next, like, 4 or 5 games here. I think you calling it this gen's Riggs is maybe the most apt thing I could possibly say. And I will just echo that strongly. I think it's just going to be one of those games that comes out at launch that a few people play because there's not a lot to play, and then nobody really remembers it afterwards. Or very few people do. I just think it's going to be kind of one of those forgettable launch games. And it's also in that position where if it came out 2 years later, it would be even more forgotten. I just think, it is this generation's Riggs is, I think, the best thing I could possibly pick to kind of describe it.
It's weird because, like, it definitely seems to be going and gunning for, like, a Twisted Metal but not, edgelord kind of vibe. It seems to be going for, like, a more colorful, vibrant Twisted Metal, vehicle combat kind of game. And just for whatever reason, maybe just as an industry, like, that's just no longer something that really, like, appeals to us. Or maybe, Rocket League, because of what that came in and did, maybe that's just what people are looking for in vehicle pseudo combat type games or something like that. I don't know.
I think it's just gonna, I hope it does great. I hope the team that made it, gets another crack at the bat, but I don't have high hopes for it. And it's also, again, leaning into the next game of Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition, another game that I personally am just almost certainly not going to invest any time in.
Yeah.
I don't know really what your thoughts are on that, but
yeah, as much as I had to read in our kind of Game of the Year coverage at the end of last year, Cam's love for this game and Frank's love for this game, like, it led me to hop in and try it out when it was on, like, Game Pass at some point in time. But I got through, like, one level and I was like, yeah, this just isn't my kind of thing. I've never been a huge fan of that, like, action combat, just trying to get like the highest score in a level kind of thing. Like I played through Bayonetta for the first time a couple years ago and was like, I just don't get the appeal of this. And this, I mean, for people who love Devil May Cry, this certainly seems like the best way to play it, but that's not me, and so it's not something I'm gonna hop into there at launch.
Yeah, I agree. But again, if you, to Cam and Frank and all the people who love Devil May Cry and want to play it again, shout out, you're gonna get a great crack at it. Speaking of games you can play again, Fortnite is also coming to the PS5 at launch. I've actually never played 1 second of Fortnite. I feel like out of like if the big three battle royale games are kind of Fortnite, Warzone, Apex right now, it's the only one I haven't really touched at all. So in that vein, maybe I could play a few rounds, see if I'm missing anything on Fortnite. But I feel like beyond that, I probably won't spend too much time playing Fortnite again. This just feels like it's Fortnite. It's going to be on everything possible. It's Fortnite. You know what it is.
Yeah, I got really into Fortnite for like a summer
a
couple years ago. And it was like I played 1 or 2 matches as like a squad with like Lauren and Joey and Harv, I think, was kind of like our little quartet. And we got like a win in one of those. And then pretty much from then on, I just did like the 50v50 modes and stuff like that. And the occasional like, standard battle royale 1 versus 100. But yeah, I got really into it for like season 5, I think, or something like that. And then just at some point was like, all right, I've had my fill and have not gone back since. Like I occasionally still see things pop back up and I'm like, like if I were interested in hopping in, the Marvel recently, hopping in for the Marvel stuff would have been what would get me back in, but it didn't. And so at this point, it's just one of those games like, oh, if there's a big in-game event, I'll just watch, the YouTube videos that come out after the fact or the news stories or something about it. I have almost no interest in hopping back into Fortnite.
Yeah, again, I'll maybe check out a few rounds, but even then, there's just gonna be so much else happening, as this kind of list is showing, that like I just don't know if I'll ever really get around to Fortnite, or at least during this launch window. After Fortnite, kind of rounding us into the second half, we've got Godfall. Trev, any thoughts for this one?
Godfall strikes me as Battleborn 2.0 in that
you're on fire with these.
it's just like, this is not, I mean, like we talked about Borderlands earlier, and this is just not the kind of game I'm looking for from a Gearbox thing. And it's not, it's Gearbox published, it's not Gearbox developed or whatever, but it's still, it's that thing of like, when I think of a Gearbox game or the Gearbox games I enjoy or want to enjoy, it is the Borderlands, it is the characters and the humor and stuff like that. And this just feels so like, medieval or whatever, and too kind of serious for what I'm looking for. And I just have no interest in hopping into another kind of like games as a service looter. This one's a looter slasher or whatever. Like I excuse me, I've put in a bunch of time into Avengers. That's kind of like my looter game at the moment. And even that, like, I'm worn out on, and I'm just kind of waiting for new characters at this point. So Godfall's one of those. I'm just like, there has been nothing that has sold me on this game. It just kind of looks like generic. Like, I never played Heavenly Sword, but it feels like almost the Heavenly Sword of, because that Heavenly Sword was PS3, right? And just like, when I think of Heavenly Sword, I think of the same kind of vibes I'm getting for Godfall right now, of just like, there's nothing about this game that is really going to pull me into it.
I think that launch games and launch windows are hard, because you naturally want to have as many things as possible on a console to kind of touch as many bases as possible to try to bring in as many people, and also to keep them playing after they get through like the 1 or 2, 3 big marquee things. And I actually think the PS5 actually has more than a few big launch kind of things to play, but there are also always going to be the Godfalls and the Destruction All Stars on kind of the tap as well.
Maybe it'll be a Warhammer, and it'll find like an audience that just becomes like a very hardcore audience that just kind of carries this game throughout the next couple of years.
And I would love that. Like, I would love to see Godfall and I would love to see all these games succeed and be great. I just think that more likely is that it is just going to be one of those games that, again, is there, that some people might have like fondish memories of when they think back on kind of the PS5 launch, but more of us will probably just be like, oh, right, yeah, you remember Godfall? If we remember it at all. It does not really strike me as like something I necessarily need in the moment right now, but more power to them. I hope it succeeds. I hope it definitely finds that audience and finds that community that kind of helps sustain it going forward. Speaking of communities that have sustained things, as an aside, Just Dance 2021 is coming. It is our first sneak peek into the year 2021. Hopefully it's better than 2020. Trevor, what are your expectations and your hopes for your most anticipated game of the year, Just Dance 2021?
Yeah, this is just reminding me because like looking through the list, the other sports games don't seem to be on this list. So I'm curious if they just aren't coming out at launch, or if they're not being up-res. Because I feel like 2K, like NBA 2K and whatnot. I thought they were coming out as launch titles.
NBA is also on the list. The other ones I maybe aren't actually.
Yeah. Anyway, I've never cared about Just Dance. I do not care about Just Dance 2021. It's one of those games that has its audience, has its diehard fans. It's just never my thing. So yeah, I have no thoughts on Just Dance.
I agree. I concur. Never understood it. Never really got Dance Dance Revolution either. But shout out to George Cruz, who somewhere in Omaha, Nebraska, probably will be purchasing Just Dance 2021 and hopefully will love it. Next up is a game I'm actually really excited for, which is Maneater, a game that you really liked quite a bit earlier this year. I'm actually going to be purchasing Maneater for the PS5. I'm really excited about this game. It had like its own moment back in like March or April, I think.
It came out in May.
Yeah, May, and you really dug it. You really sold me on it then. So I'm excited to dive into Maneater, actually. I think it'll be another one of those in between Valhalla and, Call of Duty and a peek forward to the next two games. Spider-Man, hopping into Maneater, too, just kind of like a more bite-sized, chill, just like enjoy yourself kind of game.
Yeah, Maneater is I was thinking about this when I started looking at this list earlier today. I was like, how do I describe Maneater? And I describe Maneater as a great good game. It is like I would put it firmly in like the 7.0, 7.5 range, but it is like the pinnacle of what that kind of game can be. It's just a ton of mindless fun. You're running around as a shark, wreaking havoc on everything. It is very much a throwback to just kind of those types of games, and has probably pound for pound in its like weird little collectibles, some of the funniest collectibles, because like it's just rife with pop culture references. Like there's one collectible type that is basically like tourist traps underwater or something like that, and pretty much everyone you find is a reference to something in pop culture. You'll find SpongeBob's Pineapple House, you'll find the banana stand from Arrested Development, and it's just like they have so much fun with the writing and with the script, and yeah, it's just a very fun, mindless kind of game that you don't have to get super invested and super deep into. It's just you're gonna go around, you're gonna be tasked with go eat 10 people on the beach. All right, I'm gonna go swim over to the beach, gonna flop around on land and just chomp away at people, and then hunters are gonna come and attack me, and I'm gonna have to like defeat them a la like a wanted system from GTA, and yeah, it's just a very fun game. It's not one I have any need to hop back into, but yeah, I got the platinum on it over the summer and really enjoyed playing it on current gen stuff. So I'm glad that like this is one of those games that people will get to hop into for the first time on next gen.
Yeah, I'm super stoked. I really think this game could crack into my top 10. And also like I feel like I've got like a strong affinity for like really great good games. Like I really kind of enjoy those games quite a bit. And always enjoyed championing them. So I'm very excited for this game. It's that thing of like I know I will love Maneater. I'm very excited to dive into it. If anything, this conversation just makes me be like, what if I just get Maneater now? But no, I'm excited for the launch of it. I'm excited to dive into that as well. That could also be one of the first games I kind of plow through and finish because it's not long, right? Like it's not much beyond like 10 hours, is it?
Yeah, no, I mean, especially like just mainlining the campaign. Yeah, it's probably 10 hours or less. And then it's not incredibly overboard in like the collectibles and stuff. There are, a lot of collectibles and kind of in each area of the map or whatever that you kind of have to go through and grab especially if you're going for like the platinum. But yeah, it's just a good fun time. And if you don't want to, I hit max level probably like long before, probably like around the time I was like at the halfway point of the game. So at that point, it just became a matter of like, okay, I'm just going through and like 100%ing each area before I move on to the next for the story beat purposes and stuff like that. Because yeah, there's like minor RPG elements and stuff like that too. But yeah, it's just fun game.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that. For the next two, I'm just gonna have us do them at the same time because that feels like the correct choice.
Mm-hmm.
And that is Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales and Marvel Spider-Man Remastered. I think we are each very excited for Miles Morales. Am I correct?
Yep. Yes, yeah. Absolutely. That's probably the one I'm most excited for on this list. Yeah. is hopping in and just getting to enjoy Spider-Man again and the like fun fluidity of moving around that world. The combat was always great. Yeah. And especially based on kind of what we saw in the last State of Play and Game Informer released their announced that it's basically their cover story for this month. So we're going to get to see more Miles Morales here in the coming weeks from them. But just the look and soundtrack specifically of it, it's scratching absolutely every Spider-Verse itch that I have. So I am very eager to get to hop in and see what that game feels like. And then on top of that, just getting like having a reason to go back and play the original Spider-Man again remastered is just going to be a ton of fun and a great way to spend a weekend or something like that.
Yeah, I'm all in. I'm very excited. Again, I had talked about on one of the pods we had done how I never actually finished Spider-Man back when it came out on the PS4, so I'm also excited to like actually finish the main campaign as well in Spider-Man, but even more so just to hop into Miles' world, play as Miles, get his story, and listen to that soundtrack. I'm sure I'm very excited. Again, whenever I opened it with Valhalla as like maybe my most anticipated game, Miles Morales is right there alongside with it. If anything, I would hope that they've taken some of the lessons and feedback they got from Spider-Man when it came out and fine-tuned some of the systems and some of the mechanics and kind of the gameplay of it to make it even tighter, to make it even better. I'm very excited. Worst case scenario, this is a game where I just spend hours and hours and hours just swinging around New York City, and that's not a bad way to spend a weekend either.
Yeah, this game, more than any, especially again after seeing the little trailer teaser thing that Game Informer put out today as a recording, like this is the best advertisement I've seen for ray tracing, as like the next generation's buzzword, ray tracing and kind of all the lighting effects and stuff. This is the game more than anything that has me seriously considering picking up an OLED 4K TV to coincide with my next gen purchases and just like enjoy how beautiful this stuff's gonna look.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have to get a new TV soon. Yeah, just too many things. Yeah, I'll be playing my PS5 on the same TV I played my PS3 on. I guess I should upgrade at some point in time. After Marvel Spider-Man, we transition into Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate. Shout out to Sub-Zero is really all my thoughts on Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate, I think. Trevor, anything to add in addition to that?
I mean, I hopped into end of the year last year. I hopped in, like I picked up Mortal Kombat just to play through the story mode.
I don't know if I knew you did this.
Yeah, because I'd heard great things about the story mode of the thing, because they really played around with like time travel and kind of like the whole legacy and history of the Mortal Kombat, you know, old Liu Kang facing, you know, off against current Liu Kang and kind of stuff like that. And so yeah, it was on sale at some point. I was like, all right, let me hop in and see what that feels like. And I had a good time with it. Have zero interest in doing any of the like online combat and stuff like that. But and so I will not be hopping back into this. But shout out to them for getting Sylvester Stallone to come in and do Rambo as you know, some of the one of the DLC characters in the new pack that's coming out with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, every now and again I think back on like Mortal Kombat and the fact that it's like in a bit of like a renaissance, if anything, since like 10, I believe, and I just find it utterly amazing that this video game series from like 1992 somehow managed to be like the fighter one that really stuck around for the next 25 years. But it has and has continued to evolve in really fun ways to watch. On series that maybe haven't evolved in as many fun ways, we've got NBA 2K21. I mean, I'll probably end up buying this too, but it'll be one of those more like hit yourself a little bit when you purchase it kind of buys. You know what I mean? Like, I shouldn't, but I just have to. Mm-hmm. Again, The Last Dance has basketball in my blood this year, really hard. Or I could just get like an NBA game on PS4. Who knows? But like, I'm sure it'll be fine. Like you speak of games that are like, you like look at it and are like, this is gonna be a 7. NBA 2K21, I bet my money on right now. Metacritic score 74. This game is gonna be a 7 if there ever was a 7 video game, probably. And so it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be enjoyable. It's an NBA 2K game. I guess no other sports games other than NBA 2K and Just Dance are coming out at launch on the PS5, but
I love that we're calling Just Dance a sports game.
but yeah, it'll be fine. You know, plays Jordan, I'm sure, in some sort of special thing they give you, whatever.
I did, and so yeah, this is where like just this not being my whole realm, but I did see NHL 21. They're doing a whole like throwback mode to 92, like NHL 92, I think, or NHL 94, something like that. And they're like, you can play through like with what Super Nintendo or Genesis graphics or whatever that was, but with like modern rosters and stuff. I'm like, I love it when these kinds of games do that, like have that kind of vibe. MLB The Show did it, you know, it kind of had a big showy version of that a couple years ago, I think. But yeah, these are never really my cup of tea. I actually went through like you mentioning that like NBA 2K might be one of those like guilty purchases for you. That's exactly what it was for me. At the PS4 launch, I picked up an NBA 2K14 and FIFA 14, and ended up putting quite a bit of time into FIFA at the time. But great. I just looked at because I was like, I'm pretty sure. Like I hopped in, played NBA 2K14, and like almost immediately bounced because it's just gotten so much more complicated in terms of like what you have to do to just do anything in that game. But I do have one trophy from NBA 2K14, and it is Now You're Ready, complete all training camp lessons. So like I went in and did the tutorial, and was like, nope, I am out, and I walked away from that game.
Hard pass. Yeah. NHL games are hard. Again, as someone who plays a lot of sports games, NHL games are like there's a lot happening and a lot of moving parts. I wish there was a FIFA game at launch. There is not. But NBA 2K, again, it'll be fine. Who knows? Maybe I'm sure a few people are going to get it. I'm sure Jono and Brendan and the Hoopscast boys will get it over in Australia and whatnot. But it is going to be that is like the game I'm most confident in. Like this game is going to be a 7 when it comes out and is reviewed by people. It's got a ceiling of at the most an 8 and a basement of at the lowest like a 6. And that's kind of what I think it's going to fall somewhere in that realm. Outside of that, though, the next game on the list, is this in alphabetical order? I guess it's alphabetical. Yeah, I guess N and then O. Is going to be Observer System Redo.
Redux.
Redux. Is that there? Okay, yeah. Take it away, Trev.
I have nothing about it. This is like the one game I think on this list that I just knew nothing about going into it, so I had to kind of look it up. It's like it's a survival horror kind of sci-fi horror game that came out in 2017, I think, and I'm just like good for them for trying to basically like capitalize on on the launch. But this checks all of the boxes of things I don't want to play.
A neo-future sci-fi cyberpunk PS5 launch game. It's just not the right one. Just good luck. Maybe. I mean, again, to your point, maybe people are going to be like really be wanting more of a cyberpunk video game after Cyberpunk. So we'll see. Next up, though, is Sackboy, A Big Adventure. I'm not sure how much of a Sackboy guy you were back in the day, but I actually really loved Sackboy and Little Big Planet back in the day. So I actually am pretty excited about this.
Yeah, I'm picking it up. I never really got too deep into the Little Big Planets.
Okay. That's
I remember playing one of them for a little bit, like with my sister even, briefly during some kind of window. But yeah, I just I was always more intrigued by like watching videos of the cool creations that people were doing with Little Big Planet levels, more so than like the games themselves. In particular, Sackboy's a little too floaty for me as a platformer. And I want like a little bit more weight to the moving around, the jumping, and all that stuff. But I'm gonna give this one a shot again. Like this is benefiting from me knowing that I'm going to be like really starved for things to play at launch. So I'm gonna pick this one up and be like, all right, this I have no doubt will be a better platforming and better family friendly experience than Knack was. So I for that alone, I'm happy to hop in and support Sackboy.
Yeah, I'm very excited. It's weird to think how long it's been since like a mainline Little Big Planet like Sackboy game, and yet how like ingrained he feels in like the PlayStation kind of mythology. And maybe part of that is because like so much of that mythology was kind of built during the PS3 era and like really cemented, and that's when he obviously was like flourishing. I'm excited for Sackboy. I love him. He's very cute. The games are always cute and charming. That's what I'm hoping for. It is like a multiplayer game, so like there could even be some sort of like that nerdy stream or something involved in that. Let's play something in the future. But yeah, I'm excited. I think maybe not the first month, but maybe in that December, January time span, I can kind of get to Sackboy and really kind of dive into that. Next up, the penultimate game on the list, unless we add one more, we have The Pathless. Any thoughts?
So this one, this very much feels like a kind of another one of those like inspired by Breath of the Wild kind of games that are coming out. I think I talked on one of the shows with Cam recently about the idea that with The Pathless, with Phoenix Rising, which used to be Gods and Monsters, and what's the third one that either just came out or is coming out? But like we're seeing all of these like Genshin Impact right now, like all these Breath of the Wild inspired games kind of hitting right now here in 2020, 3 years after kind of it took the world by storm in 2017. This is the one that I'm most intrigued by because it has, I think, the most indie feel to it, and so I'm interested to see kind of what they do with the idea and with the formula. Especially as somebody who, has a long storied history of not enjoying Breath of the Wild. But this in particular, it's like Annapurna has jumped on and is putting this game out. So I trust in their judgment in terms of like the kinds of games they cater. And I just continue to think back to, in the before times when we were at PAX East, and this was one of the most popular games on the show floor. It was like this and Fuser were two of like the big standout games that everybody was really waiting in line hours and hours to sit down and play. And it didn't, I didn't hop into that line because that's just not what I'm going to a PAX for at this point. But like all of the buzz on Pathless that was coming out was positive. So when this got announced as like a launch title, I was like, oh, that suddenly shoots up closer to the top of my list of things I'm interested in playing at launch. Because again, like I think it's going to surprise a lot of people. I think it has potential there.
Yeah, I agree. I am curious. Again, one of my worries for Pathless and any of these kind of games that aren't Watch Dogs, Spider-Man, and Assassin's Creed to an extent is always them just kind of getting not swallowed up, but like there only being so much oxygen. So I'll be curious to see how Pathless does. Honestly, I'm also curious to see even how like the bigger games like Sackboy do. I am curious too because like I don't know if you play. It's the team that made like Abzu.
Yeah,
and,
I was just gonna bring that up too. Like
I don't know if you ever played that, but like that is a thoroughly fine average video game.
I agree in terms of like the gameplay of it, but it's also one of the most beautiful games of recent in recent memory. And it was very much gunning for that like Journey feel, and like some of the people involved had come from Journey. But yeah, Abzu was one of those, like I played it and I was like, I enjoyed that experience. It wasn't as great as I hoped it would have been, but it's still like, I was just looking at that as you kind of started talking. I was like, oh, that's right, and this is by the Abzu people, so it's going to look gorgeous. I have no doubt in that. It's just a matter of like, does the gameplay, is the gameplay engaging enough to, not just be a very pretty game, but does it have good combat in that Breath of the Wild style? Because really, like, if one of my biggest complaints of Breath of the Wild was always the weapon deterioration. So if you give me Breath of the Wild style combat that doesn't have swords and bows and arrows breaking and stuff, I'm going to be very much more interested in that idea and exploring that combat than I was in Breath of the Wild. And I'm pretty sure Pathless has come out and basically said that's what they are.
So we'll see is all I know. But finally, we come to, again, kind of the last piece in the games Logan is most excited for, trifecta here, which is Watch Dogs Legion. And I don't even have any reason for it to be this excited other than to say this is what I always wanted Watch Dogs to be to begin with. Based on like what it seems like it's going to be in the trailers, what they've said about it. And then also the location and like actual story behind it is super cool, and I'm like down with. I don't know much of your I think you enjoyed Watch Dogs 2, probably like a lot of people did, but beyond that, I don't really have any idea where you're kind of at with Watch Dogs Legion.
Yeah, I played like the original Watch Dogs when that came out, and I was like, this was a forgettable story and characters and stuff like that, and I just never like I didn't really get too into the original Watch Dogs. Watch Dogs 2 came out, I enjoyed it more, but even that I played it, I thought it had a fun satirical take on San Francisco, and especially because of how frequently I'd been to San Francisco around that time. It was nice and fun getting to hop into that city and like knowing my way around that city almost. But like in the years since, it's been a completely kind of forgettable. It went in one ear out the other kind of thing. Watchdog Legions it's interesting because this one's going to come out actually on current gen end of October, and so it'll be curious to see like how many people are going to hop into it now, versus are people who are getting the next gen stuff just going to wait and hop into it in next gen right alongside Valhalla. Like it's such a weird. It is. Ubisoft is pulling an EA here where they're putting out Titanfall 2 and Battlefield 1 back to back, sacrificing one to the other, and given Assassin's Creed's lineage compared to Watch Dogs, like Watch Dogs definitely feels like it's being the one just kind of put out to die, and I don't like I'm kind of okay with it. Like nothing has really like pulled me into it, especially given what 2020 has been. I think it's hitting a little too close to home for what I'm kind of looking for in like video game escapism, in terms of like authoritarian government that's just kind of like abusing its citizens and that kind of stuff, and the police state and all that stuff. I'm just like, I'm not really this doesn't really like scratch doesn't really blow up my skirt or whatever this time around. It's one that if I pick it up, it's probably going to be 6 months from now on sale or something like that. I have very little interest in really hopping into it. If I'm going to pick up a Ubisoft game for the new system, it's going to be Valhalla. Like I appreciate some of the ideas they're putting into it, like the idea that you can recruit anybody to your squad or whatever is a fascinating idea. I don't, but like at the same time, to make that work, there have to be drastic limitations to it. So there's not like you're gonna have cases where like, yeah, you've got these characters that are quote unquote playing out this different stories, but they're probably all gonna like coalesce along the same kind of story and the same kind of beats, and it's just gonna be like, oh, you can approach this mission a different way because this person has such and such a skill set that you can use or something like that. And I'm just like, I don't need to hop into that anytime soon. I mean, if like reviews blow me away for it, then maybe that'll get me to pick it up sooner than later. But this is one I'm just kind of like, I'm fine waiting for this to go on sale for like $30 or something like that.
I'm very excited. Again, I think it's one of the games that, out of Valhalla and Watch Dogs Legion, maybe Valhalla is the one that is definitely getting the bigger push and kind of the bigger buzz around it. But the ideas, it's the same. I can understand people for being like, this is the same thing that was said, if those like forever ago, about the first Watch Dogs game. But like, if the promise and potential of what they're kind of pitching matches the reality, it would be incredible to me. So I am excited, naively and foolishly, for Watch Dogs Legion to disappoint me, but either way, it'll be a hell of a time. I assume exploring London and kind of that dystopian Blade Runner-esque future, and I'm again, like, Aiden Pierce being in the game doesn't mean anything to me. It means actually nothing. I'm excited about this game because of what this game is saying, what this game's setting is, what this game's world is, and what they're kind of pitching in terms of like, plays anyone. It just seems super cool. If you can actually live up to even like 2/3 of that, then I will have a pleasant and enjoyable enough experience with Watch Dogs Legion, I would say. You did mention before we started recording, and so we can briefly touch on it because it's not on this list, but Cyberpunk 2077, might have heard about it, maybe not, is also a video game that is coming out in the near future.
Comes out a week after the launch, the PS4 or PS5 launch here in the States, November 19th. So technically it will be a launch title in all of the other regions of the world that aren't getting the PS5 until November 19th. And that's like, for me, it's almost like that's going to hit at just like the perfect time, because I feel like that will have, hopefully that first week will have given me time to get through a couple of the big games I really want to tackle before I dive into the big Cyberpunk experience. We talked a little bit about, before we started recording, like us not really knowing one another's kind of like expectations or interest level in Cyberpunk. It's certainly one that has caught my eye since they started kind of promoting it, at E3s ago or whatever, even when it was just kind of like behind closed door demos or whatever that people were kind of coming out and talking about. I am more excited for it after this year, after actually sitting down and like playing through the entirety of Witcher 3, which I had originally put, I don't know, 80 to 100 hours in back when it came out in 2015, but never beat the game. So when I kicked this year off after The Witcher Netflix, really spending time with it, I'm excited for a cyberpunk by a cyberpunk game, a future like neo-futurism game by the same team behind The Witcher, because it's more my aesthetic than high fantasy is typically. So that I'm very excited for the prospect of Cyberpunk, and it seems like a game that I will absolutely get lost in. I'll be interested in like playing through and seeing like what the difference between playing as a nomad is versus playing as a a corpo or whatever the different like character types are. And it just seems like it's going to be hopefully a fun cyberpunky RPG that is going to have lots and lots in the way of like variability in how we can play that game and approach different missions and all that kind of stuff. So it's one that I would not be surprised if that's what ends up taking most of my November and December sitting down and playing with Cyberpunk.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I'm excited about Cyberpunk, but obviously someone who doesn't really have any prior experience with The Witcher or anything else like that, I feel like I'm continuously having to remind myself that I'm excited. And I don't even think I ever really put it together until looking at this list of 20 games where it's like, Assassin's Creed Valhalla and Playroom and Maneater and Watch Dogs Legion and Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War and Spider-Man. It's like, I don't know when I would get to Cyberpunk, because I would rather play all of those games I just named more than Cyberpunk, I think. And again, I could be wrong. If the reviews come out and it's just like incredible, if you or Cam or Frank, come into Slack and say this game is like a masterpiece, it is like a must play, obviously that'll change my calculus. But like right now, I think after spending an hour plus talking about all these other games, it's like, man, maybe I really won't even get to Cyberpunk for like into like January, February, March of like next year, even potentially. Like it might be one of those games that just has to get pushed because of everything that's coming out.
I mean, I would also, for you in particular, just have like observing as I have kind of your gaming habits this year, you haven't been certainly nowhere near as like down the gaming rabbit hole as I've been. As we kind of like touched on, at the top of like you still haven't gotten around to Last of Us Part 2, which I imagine going into this year was probably one of your most anticipated games. So it just gaming hasn't been your like at the top of your forefront to do list here in kind of this I don't know if it's pandemic era or what, but it seems like you are going to be a lot more selective in kind of your experiences, whereas I'm going to be quite content to, maybe I'll put in an hour into Bugsnax and be like, all right, I see what this game is. I don't need to play through this like entirely right now. I can hop over to something else, and kind of do more like taste testing of these games, and not even that, but like I said, kind of at the top of the show, I've requested that Thursday through Tuesday off work, so I'm just gonna plan on basically for those like 6 days just playing my PS5 nonstop, and experiencing any number of these games that we've kind of gone over, and just kind of like engulfing as much of that as I can, just because that's, especially in a time where like I'm not going and catching a movie once or twice a week or something like that at Alamo Drafthouse. Like, gaming is how I keep my mind off of everything else in the world. So yeah, I think part of it comes down to our different approaches, and so something like a big meaty sci-fi RPG is absolutely like right up my alley. One of the things that like could have very much thrown like the end of the year for a loop would have been if that like rumored Mass Effect trilogy had actually come out, but it sounds like it's rumored now to be pushed to next year. Because I would have been like, all right, maybe I'm just going to sit down and replay the Mass Effect games, if that had come out this year, and that would have gobbled up a ton of my time. But since that is happening, I am freed up a little bit. Yeah, I think there's any number of these games that I'm going to be eager to put a bunch of time in, and that's not even including like with the PlayStation Plus collection. I'm probably just going to be like, hey, I want to go back and play through God of War again because it's my favorite game of all time right now, and I haven't played it this year, so it seems like a fun enough time to revisit that game, if I can find the time for it. And especially as like gaming the last month or so has been for me, it's been like, okay, I'm putting in a ton of time into Hades right now, or before that I put in a ton of time into Avengers, and before that Fall Guys. It's been like very much like one game at a time kind of thing that I'm playing, and then I'm kind of done with and ready to kind of move on to. But with this glut of like different flavors that we're going to get next month, I'm going to be interested to really kind of be more ambitious in attempting and testing out all those different gaming tastes.
All I know is the PlayStation 5 is coming out in 1 month, and there are 21 games plus others coming out for it. We're very excited up here at That Nerdy Side, as you can tell from this hour-and-a-half long podcast. But that's it. We're not talking about video games any longer on this show, unless somebody's got a shout-out about them, which we don't, because my shout-out's about sports.
Gross.
I tweeted it out earlier in the day, so it's going to be easy for me to find right now on my phone, probably. If I can get to it quickly while also talking to fill the air. Here we go. It's a piece by Zach Lowe over on ESPN, and it's basically about LeBron, MJ, the GOAT debate. Obviously, I am a massive Michael Jordan fan. He is instrumental in my love of sports, my love of competition, my love of the Chicago Bulls, so many different things. And I'm very much in the camp that Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player of all time, quite possibly the greatest athlete ever. He's just a uniquely just kind of otherworldly figure in so many ways. And I think Zach Lowe, in his article, in his feature, does a good job of agreeing about that, saying all that's true, everything about that is true, and then also saying and comparing LeBron and the change in kind of contours and natures of the GOAT debate. And I thought it was interesting. I've been someone who's not necessarily been a massive LeBron fan for most of his kind of competitive playing career, and obviously as someone who very much kind of looked up to Michael Jordan. I thought it was an interesting article. Even if I didn't agree with every point, I thought it was very well stated, very well written. And I think it's a thing for me of Roger Bennett, who is one of the two hosts of the Men in Blazers podcast, which is a soccer podcast, always talks about just savor what we're witnessing, and he's just talking about it in terms of like great soccer players who are going to retire, but just I kind of like to take it for like anything that you're witnessing that is kind of otherworldly. And LeBron James is someone who you can love him or hate him, but it is fascinating to watch what he's done over 17 years. And even if he's not Michael Jordan, he is at worst the third best player to ever play the game, and increasingly becoming at worst the second best person to ever play the sport. And it was a very, very good article, very thoughtful, and kind of comparing how these two players are just so fundamentally different in almost everything about their personalities and who they are as people. And yeah, I very much recommend that. ESPN.com. You can go find that by Zach Lowe. Otherwise, if you don't have any shoutouts, Trev, that is the show.
Yeah, nothing for me.
Awesome. So you can go support us over at patreon.com/thatnerdyshite, like all of our wonderful patrons and supporters have over there. Your support means the world to us. It literally made shows like this one and like that D Plus show happen. And it keeps the lights on for That Nerdy site as a whole, and we are incredibly grateful and thankful for your support. Again, you can go over to patreon.com/thatnerdysite, check out all the tiers, check out all the goals, and go support us over there. You can also go like, subscribe, and share to the podcast on podcast services all across the globe. It really does mean a lot to us, especially for newer shows like this. Really, all of the That Nerdy Site shows are newer. None of them are a year old even. So go subscribe to all of them. Go rate and review all of them on iTunes, and go tell all of your friends and grannies about them. We really do appreciate it. Otherwise, you can go find Trevor over at Trevor J. Starkey on the internet. Anything that you want to give a shout out to, Trev?
Shout out to this week's That Nerdy Site show. I sat down with Cam and Frank, and we talked about a bevy of topics and stuff. The ones I brought to the table were some more Hades updated thoughts, as well as my love of the team over at StarKid, who've been doing online musicals on YouTube and stuff for the last decade plus. And it's just I have been feeling nostalgic for a lot of that stuff, so I've been going through and like rewatching a lot of their catalog, and just enjoying their fun approach to topics like superheroes and Disney, and most recently like horror movie genre kind of stuff in the musical theater space, and it's just a ton of fun.
Awesome. So go check all of that out. You can go find myself at Lefty Logie on the internet. I will go plug something I haven't even listened to yet because I can't, or I can, I guess, but it's not. Anyway, go listen to the That Nerdy Site show, Patreon exclusive podcast. If you're a patron, if not, become a patron and listen to it. It's only $1, I believe, Trevor, to listen to this show. And Trevor, Cam, Brandon Gans, and Frank's 64 game, I believe.
More than that, because it's a 64 game bracket, but we also had
play-ins, so it's like 68 probably.
Yeah, 16 play-ins.
So yeah, go listen to that play-in bracket of what they dubbed the greatest PlayStation 4 exclusive. I still don't know. I'm very excited to check it out and listen to it.
4.5 hours. I can shoot you over the link when we hop off this call, Logan.
Perfect. Please do. I'll listen to it maybe in increments. But I'm very excited to see what was named the winner and how much I assuredly disagree with some of this picks, if probably ultimately agreeing with the ultimate choice and the top 4, as Trevor has assured me I will. So I recommend everyone go listen to that, go support that, and go just for $1. Listen to what we at That Nerdy Site named the best PlayStation 4 exclusive of this gen. Otherwise, you can go find That Nerdy Site at That Nerdy Site on all kinds of things all across the globe: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Google Pixel, filters.
No,
all
we're
the
not
good
on.
things.
We're not on most of those things actually.
All of those things. And otherwise, thank you for listening. Tell us what you're excited about for the upcoming generation launch window for the PlayStation 5. Tweet at us and I guess email us if you want to. Your games you're most excited about and just thoughts on the games in general that we talked about here today. Otherwise, thank you for listening. Play your games and be good to each other.